webinar on Search Engine Journal with the CEO of Sonic. He shared that AI search went from driving 2.5% of their leads to 35% as of March. We know that that growth isn't super surprising, but the stat that I found most interesting was that 96% of citations that AI is pulling from now point to pages that you don't even own. So Reddit, YouTube, different industry publications, and that jumped from around 80% just a few months ago. So it's growing fast. And his whole take here was basically saying that AI turned SEO into like an engineering problem almost because these citations don't last. They get reshuffled every time a model updates. So the game now is kind of spreading yourself across a bunch of different sources rather than betting everything on your own site, which obviously your own site is still incredibly important. You're gonna get cited. You want your site to be the source of truth. But if you're a multi-location brand, that's a bit uncomfortable, right? It's almost all of the citations are living on pages that you don't really have direct control over, or maybe these websites like Reddit that you haven't had a strategy in the past, and now you have to think about differently because they're now a part of your search, SEO, e-com, like all of that strategy is tied up in this now, thanks to how AI cites and finds information about you.
So when we did our first AI visibility study toward the end of last year, we also found that 75 to 80% of the sources cited for local recommendations were third-party sources. The brand's website is an important source, but third-party citations kind of eclipse that. But we're going to be repeating that study later this year as kind of a sneak preview of something that's coming soon. And it'd be interesting to see if that number has grown or remained relatively stable. Local search being kind of a different scenario than the kind of branded lead gen oriented search that I think this study was focused on. But I think the big point that our study discovered and I would want to make here is that it's not a list of a million random websites that's always different no matter what you search. They actually do fall into a pattern. In fact, the more local searches we conducted using AI, the more we discovered that Google Maps and Yelp and Facebook and other sites, TripAdvisor, apartments.com for property, kept showing up over and over and over again as citation sources. And so, although for an individual brand that citation profile may differ, there are patterns suggesting that there are some sites that are way more important than others, and that lends a sense of you know there's an ecosystem that we can begin to understand and influence in order to drive AI visibility, which is good news, I think, for brands.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what Damien just said about understanding that ecosystem, I think knowing that number is going up, I wouldn't waste any time. We know what these citations are. To Damien's point, it's the same, few that we're seeing every time. YouTube, Reddit, LinkedIn's another big one. I would make sure you have a strategy there. I wouldn't waste any time, and I would make sure you have some type of strategy there, or at least start thinking about it because these numbers might continue to go up.
Well, Kelly, what I always found interesting too, I was actually asked recently by a customer trying to understand, like, well, does social actually matter when you're trying to get cited on in LLMs? And I always go back to this study that we did,
Mhm.
Damien, because Facebook was what, like fourth most prominent? It was like consistent, regardless of industry. Like Facebook was up there, which really surprised me. But I guess when you're talking multi-location, when you're looking at these brands, like it is a trusted source. So yeah, like
Yep.
local social, even at its core as like a citation play, definitely matters when you're trying to appear in an LLM citation.
And there's just no question that the more sophisticated AI gets, the more it's going to rely on authoritative sources, the well-established sources that can be trusted to have accurate information, to provide, the best resource in terms of peer review type content. Those are going to be the sources that AI favors over time.